you still get understood because it's not 140 characters. I mean, people hear your tone.
Yeah.
You have to be almost
That's why I
disingenuous.
don't tweet, by the way.
Yeah,
I can't.
it makes
Just
me
can't
nervous
do
too.
it.
But you have to almost be disingenuous to try to pull something out of a podcast or out of context.
Get a soundbite.
Yeah, a soundbite like that. And I think people will. I don't think you'll experience any super negative stuff. But if you do, I don't know. What do you got to say that's so crazy?
Oh no, I just mean like, I think that my main opponent in this whole debate, if you will, is the progressive Christian pro-choicers.
Okay, you're worried about the people pushing back on your view. This is a good way to start. I like this. You're worried that progressive Christian pro-choicers will find you too conservative.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if you are pro-baby, you are anti-woman.
If you're pro-baby, you're anti-woman. All right, start telling me about it. I'm going to turn your mic up just a little bit more.
How's that for a soundbite?
Scoot up and tell me why, if you are pro-baby, you are anti-woman. Tell me what that means.
Man, it's tough. It's tough and it sucks because if anywhere in any other conversation, whether you're pro-immigrant or...
Hold on. I'm sorry. I think I'm missing...
This is great.
It's fine. I think I have the wrong input here. I'm glad I caught it. We may have to actually start over again.
It's great because I don't know where I was going.
We're rolling live, Reva. Yeah. Just tell everybody, sorry everybody, I had the wrong input on my Pro Tools.
I'm just waving, Matt.
Yeah,
I'll just wave.
No wonder I had the. Don't worry about it. I'm just gonna start over right there. It'll sound false now, but I liked what we said. I just don't have you on it. I'm gonna turn you down now. Sorry everybody. See, you can do foolish stuff live and it's still fine.
I love it.
All right,
I'm having a great time.
Tell me, let's start again there. Why are you nervous about doing this live or even doing it at all?
Well, honestly, I'm nervous because I have so much to say about it, and I want to make sure that people hear me clearly and people know my heart about it. And
I still didn't start my recorder. Sorry. I'm going to say that one more time and we're going to be fine. I've got it all set up right now. It's going to sound good and everything.
Okay.
Okay.
You're killing me a little bit.
For real. No, I know. We'll keep it abbreviated. Okay. So what makes you nervous about doing this live, especially, or just doing it at all?
Well, I'm nervous live because I don't know what I'm going to say. But I'm nervous about talking about this whole topic in a public forum because I really want people to know my heart on this, and I want people to understand that there is dialogue happening on this topic between people that you wouldn't expect are talking about it. Mm-hmm. The new pro-life movement is people at the forefront of it. A lot of them are atheists and feminists, and it's really exciting, and it's becoming like an anti-violence movement, and I just want to make sure that when I talk about it, when I'm saying like things, because I believe that abortion is murder, you know. So when I say things like that, people kind of shut down, and I want to be able to... Well,
don't lead with that.
I know. But I want to be able to explain where I'm coming from, but also I have such a respect for the pro-choice movement and the people that are really passionate about it. And I got together with a pro-choice friend of mine. Oh, man, she's so awesome. And her and I have been talking for this past year about starting our own podcast. Like, what would that look like about just having a whole conversation surrounding abortion and talking to women who have had abortions based on this idea that we're not going to get anywhere if we don't talk to each other, if we don't have dialogue with each other, and we don't learn about like why each other feels this way. You know what I mean? So I've made it sort of my mission starting this past year to start that dialogue and figure out the hearts of these women. If I'm going to say I'm pro-life and because I care about humans, that means I have to care about the human women that are having abortions. You know, that means I have to also think about, if I'm pro-life and that means I care about humans, that means I have to think, like, how do I feel about war and the death penalty? I mean, all this kind of stuff kind of comes together, and you have to make some big decisions. But I respect my pro-choice friends who know where they stand more than I do most of the people that I think this is where my hate mail might come from. Most of the people that I know who claim to be pro-life, or because they identify as Christians, they just assume they're pro-life.
Yep, that's true.
But they're not talking about it, and they're not necessarily against it, but they're not for it. It's just gross to me. And I think that as humans, we really have an obligation to know what abortion really is, understand how we feel about it, and make decisions based on that. Louis C.K., did you see his new stand-up?
Yeah, I thought it was really
freaking brilliant.
I love when people use...
I wish we could insert clip.
Yeah. Well, we might can do that. I'll look and see if we can do
good.
that. We can at least point people to it, but I think that's really good. So, I mean, he's obviously a pro-choice person. But
is he?
I think so. I mean, I took it that way, but here's the thing. I'm almost only attracted to nuanced points of views and people that are willing to lay bare the faults of or consider the other views. I think that's the only thing that makes any sense. I think we're polluted right now with people selling certainty on platforms, and it drives me crazy. And so this is an issue that's really difficult to talk about at all, because everybody feels judgment immediately, and the consequences, as Louis points out in that bit, are extreme. I mean, it's an very
It's either
extreme
taking a shit or it's killing
nothing.
a baby.
Right, it's either taking a shit or killing a baby. It's either nothing or it's really something. And he goes so far as to be able to paint it in the light that, honestly, obviously he's killing a baby, but
women should be able to do it.
Yeah, it's just great. Like, I'm so glad. Like, I love the use of humor like that, and I hope that conversations like this can do that. But when you put, and that's why I want you to feel comfortable, because you can take that lesson from Louis, and he's a master, of course. He's using comedy, but when you get to hear somebody deliver something, and you feel like they're really barking at truth and not trying to make a point or be political, and have a conversation with somebody like me. That will come through. So you may have stuff wrong. You may change your position later. So might somebody else. And people, I believe, understand that in a podcast medium. And that's why shows like Depolarize are important, and just trying to do it. So anyway, I'm got recommended to talk to you by Dan Cope from Depolarize. So I'm glad that you're here.
Depolarize is great. Listen to it.
Yes, Depolarize is a great podcast. Ellen helps Dan with that. But I'm really glad to be able to get in this topic a little bit. And I'd love to just find some of the really hard questions that you said that you have to decide on and get into there. I'll just tell you a quick background on me is, to me, I find many topics, I find myself changing my views a lot on a lot of stuff, especially over the last decade or 5 years. And I tend to maybe be moving in a general left direction, even though I hate to say that, but I'm looser and less conservative. I'll at least say that.
You mean politically and socially?
Maybe just in general. Like, I feel like I'm loosening up on things that I thought were clear or binary, and I probably had a conservative leaning on many of those things, whether socially, theologically, or whatever. I'm not speaking about economics here, but I may still be relatively conservative economically, but there's certain issues. Oh, let's say marijuana, for instance. Obviously, where are we going with certain things? It's so obvious that gay marriage and marijuana, that we're just going a direction, and it's fine. I mean, that's just kind of obvious. That's just kind of the way I look at it. And it's not ever going to go back and forth on those. That's a one-way ticket. We're all going there. Yeah. Everybody just chill out. This seems silly. Now, abortion, I feel so not that way about. Like, it's like, wait, that's not the same thing at all. And I don't think it's a pet issue. I just think it's just clearly not at all one of those social issues that's changing over time to where, now eventually we're going to all go here. I don't think that's true at all with this issue. In fact, I would go so far as to say the only maybe slightly unique thought I have on the matter is including that technology will be the solution for it ultimately. It's not going to be one. I don't believe that it'll be won and lost by convincing people, honestly. I think at some point it'll be like, whenever everybody's born in a way, and then whatever time you want to start having kids, you go to the doctor and they turn your uterus on or something. Like, and at that point there will be no.
I wish that was true.
Well,
now.
It may be. I'm just saying,
turn
in
it
100 years, in 200 years, whatever, there'll be just some genetic suppression that is already turned on in humans that is turned off.
Yeah.
When you decide you want to have a baby, it's as easy as you just turn it on and then you can. So I think
Yes.
eventually we will eliminate unwanted pregnancies. They won't exist.
We won't even have to talk about this
And then when
anymore.
we do, we will clearly look back on this period as, oh my gosh, that was like everybody on both sides will go, well, they were having a nuanced fight, and I can understand the points of view, but clearly that was a horror, like factory farming. It's just like that's a horror, a stain on where we have been.
Yeah,
that's
because
what
nobody.
I feel like
I mean, I think everybody, every level-minded, normal, healthy person can agree it would be great to have less abortion.
Yes,
and that's ultimately where I am now. A year ago, the idea of talking about abortion made me want to throw up because I was so anxious about it because I didn't know how to talk about it and I didn't know anything about it. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, I need to do some research. I really need to just figure out where I feel about this and whether it be, it's almost like apologetics for me. You know, I need to know really how I feel about it so I don't get so nervous every time it gets brought up because I just like, I don't want to be a bumbling mess. I actually love talking about it now. It doesn't give me anxiety.
that's important
in that way because I know where I stand now. And I feel like, I mean, I don't like to argue about it necessarily, but I love to have conversations about it.
Well, let's start with conceding the things that we understand about pro-choice, which I think we've already kind of done a little bit. I would acknowledge that people that even that are pro-choice, I don't believe that they're I don't think they're pro killing babies.
No,
I don't.
There are some weird ones that are, but for the sake of this conversation, let's not count them.
Right. So I agree with you that for the most part, even somebody that I may be, I don't think of them as opponents. I don't even really think of as opponents or a battle. It's just we're trying to think through this stuff, and I think I've got a pretty good bead on reality, but maybe I don't. Yeah, maybe an intellectual. But even the people that, if you wanted to call them opponents, I give them a good amount of credit because at some point there is the difficult choice of a woman's right does bump in at some point.
Yeah.
That does come in somewhere at some point, no matter what. So
that sucks. I mean, the whole thing sucks. Nobody is having a good time talking about this.
They're not just the bad guys out there.
Yes.
Right? There's many reasonable pro-choice people that you know, like, and respect, and even women that have had abortions.
Oh, yeah. And I know a couple women who have had abortions and used it as birth control. I've had several. And it's tough.
Well, here's something I thought the other day, and tell me how you think about this. It occurs to me that our the certainty of our stance on how it's murder doesn't totally hold up under the scrutiny of, I know people that have had abortions, and when I'm around them, I don't feel like, oh shit, this is a murderer.
Yeah.
I don't think that about them.
Yeah.
I don't think this is a baby killer. I think, oh no, I feel bad for this person. I wish it would turn out differently. I love them. It's okay, but it's not. I mean, I don't think, oh, there's this dumbass murderer here. Everybody watch out.
Sure.
Or I'm uncomfortable. I don't think that.
Well, but that's what
I
the
would
pro-life...
if they put their baby in a dumpster after it was born, I would. So clearly I've got dissonance there, right?
Well, and it's confusing. I mean, under the abortion umbrella, there is just like, there's personhood, there's legality, there's all of these things, these completely separate topics to talk about, but they all kind of bleed into each other. And I believe that every single person, whether you care about abortion or don't care, you've got to figure out when you believe a person is a person. And I respect people who, have different views than I do, but just figure out what you think. You know what I mean?
Well, let's work on that a little bit.
People, there's so many arguments. It's like, and I don't want this to turn into just a pro-life stance because I promised my pro-choice friend that I'd give her a shout out today and talk about some of the assumptions that they make about pro-lifers. But people say, well, they can't feel pain. Okay, well, let's talk about like nerve development. When a baby has their full set of nerve endings, can't we at least talk about that? Or, I mean, heart beating. There's just last week, there's that study that was put out where, and I don't even know how they did it, but they showed fetuses in utero. They showed them images, and all of the fetuses responded to the images of human faces. So they showed them like inanimate objects and then a human face, and they responded to face. Stuff like that. I mean, if we're talking about clumps of cells, like I get that argument, but I believe that science points to, yeah, that's something else.
Almost
you know?
nobody's okay with the 38-week abortion, right? Almost nobody. Right?
Almost nobody.
Right. Okay.
That is
And
correct.
almost nobody's that freaked out by a missed implantation at 2 days, right?
Or an ectopic.
Ectopic.
Well, and that's
Ectopic's a little different. That actually
yeah.
freaks me out.
It should freak everybody.
But I mean, a missed a 1 day late period doesn't really bother me. Now, my wife and I've had a miscarriage too,
Yes,
and
me
that
too.
has changed my thinking a little bit in an
Yeah.
unexpected way. But we'll get to that later. But at least most people are against 39-week abortions, and very little people think it's mourn like a 1 day old missed
Yeah.
fertilization. But if you want to start at brass tacks, it's at least, tell me where you have studied on the science of, if you want to be the hardest line possible, which makes a lot logical sense to me, is once there's a unique genetic code created,
It's separate DNA.
that's the DNA of a person. I mean, that at least it's that.
Clumps of tissue.
Yeah, they're not clumps of those
it would
clumps
be
of
your
tissue.
DNA. If,
Right.
Yes.
So that just the creation of even that's still before is implantation's the next thing. That's a few days, right?
Right.
Like it's still not even implanted. And
Which is
a lot of-
where, like, if you have, and this is also super controversial because most of my friends have IUDs, but ethically, it's like I have some issues with IUDs because you know what IUDs are.
Yeah, it's where
The
you
little
plug
gadget.
up the uterus.
Stick it in there.
Yeah,
Um,
plug up the hole.
yeah, I actually learned that the history of that is camels crossing the desert. They used to stick rocks up their vaginas.
Gosh. Well, it
Can I
makes
say
sense.
vagina
But what's
on
the
this one?
problem? Yeah, you can say whatever you want. What is the problem
anyway,
with
so
the IUD?
if you believe that conception is where life begins,
Uh-huh.
then you believe that life has begun before implantation, correct?
Yeah.
Right. So if some contraceptives make your uterus what is that word? Uninhabitable, sort of a hostile environment, so it keeps it from implanting.
So the
So
sperm
you-
goes up where the egg is, which is where originally.
Sex 101.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But the sperm goes to where the egg. Where's the egg at the time of fertilization?
It's down. I'm showing. I'm not a scientist, Matt. It's. I wish we had a diagram we could show.
But the IUD keeps it after it's fertilized from going to the uterine wall to implant.
Right. It just doesn't allow it. So most people.
But it could be fertilized
you
before
could
that.
basically what I'm saying is, with most IUDs, you could be having conception and not know it. Is what I'm
Right.
saying.
Yep. Potentially abortive would be a
Potentially.
term.
So do I judge people that have IUDs? No, because I get it. It's like we're talking about clumps of cells, if you will.
Yeah.
But for me personally, because I have decided to make sort of a line,
Where's your line?
my line is conception.
Moment of conception is your line. Is that the only logical place to stop as far as
Because
you can?
once something has begun, it continues until you stop it or it stops naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed?
But
So-
now we got to get into the buts, I guess, after that.
But then but then everybody's opinion about like what makes things okay.
And I don't want to be ad hominem, say, well, it's a different thing. But so does that mean that the IVFs and stuff like that, you wind up fertilizing multiple eggs
Isn't
that
that
never
crazy? And then you throw some in the garbage.
Right, and you
What
have
is
to,
that?
but you have to say you're against that if you take your position,
Right?
right?
Isn't that
So-
crazy?
So you hold that. Also.
I have to,
You
don't
have
I?
to, right? So, yeah.
Do I go around talking about that? No, because that sounds crazy to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that life happens at conception.
Mm-hmm.
The end.
Mm-hmm.
Not the end, the beginning.
The beginning, yeah.
Yeah.
But even.
But I realize that there are things like that to say, okay, well, Ellen, you can't be there. I believe that I love absolutes.
Yeah.
I love it. I also love science. I love black and white. I love that science doesn't change. We just change how much we know about it, which is why, like, viability, for example, is different no matter what states you go to.
Yeah, it's probably not viable.
Doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, viability is not a great argument because
No.
you couldn't have. It wasn't viable 100 years ago at
Yeah,
28
doesn't make any
weeks or
sense.
whatever.
Do you listen to Radiolab?
Sometimes, yeah.
One of
I
my
do.
favorite,
Yeah, it's
very
great.
favorite shows. Jay and Robert are wonderful together, and you can just tell they disagree on a lot of like really core, like worldview stuff. And they did this episode a long time ago called 23 Weeks, 6 Days. Did you listen to it?
I think so. A long time ago.
It's just brilliant. They did a really good job of telling the story about this woman who was 23 weeks, 6 days pregnant. She went into preterm labor, had the baby, and then there was, of course, this ethical dilemma of, like, do we save this baby's life because it's not technically viable, you know? Anyway, so then at the end of the episode, a lot of time passes and they go to visit the house, and this little girl is just playing around, and it's just, they did such a good job because they didn't talk about like whether it was right or wrong or whatever. They didn't even mention abortion or anything, but it just really resonated with me, and I hope with a lot of other people, to just think like, oh man, a person, the only difference between a fetus and a baby is time, or a fetus and an adult is time. You know.
Yeah, I mean the potential's there. I mean, I don't know, but you at least draw a line. At least in sperm, spilled.
Sperm's not a person. Let's just make that real clear, because a lot of people believe that.
Yeah, that seems goofy. I mean, to me, the clearest place to begin would be DNA, and then after that, I could go as far as implantation. Personally,
sure.
I get it. I get it. I'm actually fine with that. Like, I don't actually have a problem with IVF. If I'm being honest, I probably should. I probably should, but I'm weak enough intellectually or lazy enough morally to say that doesn't seem to bother me.
Well, but it's just really not on the forefront. It's not a priority for you to figure it out right now, which I get.
But I mean, I would do it in a heartbeat if I couldn't have kids. That's what I'm telling you. Like, I know that's true. I know I would do it. So,
can't we get to a spot, though, where we're just using the one instead of like 20?
Oh, I hope so. That's what I say. I think technology is going to solve gun control and abortion and almost all of our problems.
And then we'll live in a utopia.
No, it won't be that. But I'm just saying the problems we do have, I don't believe there'll ever be a utopia, I don't think. But the problems we do have, I think, are not going to be solved by convincing 50% of people. That movement's never going to happen.
Well, or just demonizing them.
Yeah, so it's not like we'll eventually convert 100% of people to the right point of view. That's just not how it works. But culture will change, systems will change, technology will change, and I hope these problems get solved. But it does seem clear to me that pro-choice people trot out all the good arguments and buts as none of which stand on their own, but it's just a bunch of aggregates to say, but it's okay, or it's worth it, or there's even people that make reasonable points on who's to say that maybe we shouldn't get rid of certain amounts of births even at birth. I mean, you can make that argument.
Let's just get rid of the bad ones.
Yeah, I mean, you can make that. I mean, it doesn't even have to be an immoral argument to say that we're going to put the most value on the good of society over individuals. That's okay. That's a way to think that is not inherently evil.
Right.
I don't believe. So, but everybody butts up somewhere. Everybody does have to draw a line somewhere, or you have to be lazy and not think about it. Is that where most people are?
I think that's negligence. Mm-hmm. I think that especially because Christians, I think I don't know, I think we have a responsibility to at least take ownership of this topic. You know what I mean? And because we're the ones that are supposed to be loving people really well. Mm-hmm. We're not doing that. And the Christians that have gone before us and have been really shitty to people who are pro-choice have made the work harder for people like me. And that's why I'm more angry at the pro-lifers whose approach is like Westboro Baptist Church style.
Yeah.
And it's ruining it for people like me. And it's just, it takes a lot more work for me to engage in dialogue with people. And people, my pro-choice friends, especially my atheist pro-choice friends, are always really sort of surprised. Like, where did I come from? Right. But I know that there are more people like me. And the solution, because everybody wants a solution, because everybody agrees there's a problem. Mm-hmm. But the solution is less abortions or no abortions, and the only way we're going to get there is if we talk about it. I mean, it's the number one issue that is breaking down the relationship between women, period.
Okay, let's get in there, because you did say a minute ago, I don't know if it's on there or off, that there is a lot of movement where there's feminists and atheists and science that's now just pro-life. Tell me about that.
Yes, I am a part of, it's on Facebook, but it's legitimate. It's a legitimate community. Yeah. I'm a part of the Atheist and Agnostic Pro-Life League. Uh-huh.
You don't have to be actually.
You don't have to be,
participate.
which is
You
very
have to be
cool.
respectful, maybe.
Yes, and the whole purpose of the group is that they understand. Well, one, they just want to be able to encourage each other and give each other resources on all this, but also they allow people of faith to come in because they want so desperately for people of faith to understand why they are pro-life.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I still don't get it wholly because I am a Christian and because I feel that we get our value and worth from Christ.
Mm-hmm.
But as just humans, they have a very much like a human rights view towards it, even though they are atheists. And
they would say
we
the
all
human
go
rights
in the ground.
of the conceived, or most of them,
Yes.
conception, the same line as you.
Yeah.
There?
I mean, there's some murky area, like in the very beginning.
And they just stand on the human rights and anti-violence against that.
You don't get to choose for someone else. I mean,
that's sticky, though.
it is sticky,
because
man. I don't
I've been
like
thinking
it.
about this a lot. Help me think through this. I've been thinking about that a lot, how much of my children's lives is like, they're 8 months and almost 4 years old, and man, gosh, there's so many things that I and their mother do to them that are not really okay and that they can't give consent for, and there's just nothing we can do about it. It's just you know what I mean? Like, they didn't have a choice to exist. We chose for them to exist,
right.
And we put them in a position where their consent is not required or even possible for many, many things, from the way we touch them to what they do, what they don't do, and there's no way around it. But I've caused them to exist and then violate unbelievable amounts of consent.
I like that. Yeah.
And so for that reason, I'm of the point of view that no kid ever, this is the only way I can make sense of it in my head.
Okay.
No kid can ever, no parent can ever deserve anything from their kid. Never.
No.
They don't.
Oh, no.
My parents, I don't owe them anything. I really believe that. My kids don't owe me a thing. There's no thing I can ever say to them. It's like, but I'm your dad and I did this and now you owe me this.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Nope.
No, I do not think
not
that.
your problem.
And I hope that they'll be nice to me and appreciate things and stuff. But I don't deserve shit from them ever.
Agreed.
Their whole life, no matter what. That's at least my thinking, and that's my way to combat the fact that they didn't get to consent to exist, for me to wipe
but you're
them,
responsible
for me to tell where they live. So.
Yeah.
But consent, though, being the topic there, is so bizarre.
Oh,
like of course, like you've already it's just so weird. You've made a thing exist, and now you can't consent. That can't consent to if it got to exist in the first place, which almost violates consent. Like the creation of the thing almost violates a consent in a way, and then the termination of it certainly does.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know what to do.
I mean, I always like to go back to this horrible statistic that all my friends hate, but it's true. 100% of people who have an opinion about abortion were not aborted.
That's right.
I mean, what? I was on this, so this Facebook group that I'm on, someone posted this screenshot from this argument they were having with someone. And someone said, if you haven't been aborted, stay out of it.
Yeah, I made that
What
joke on the Bad
logic
Christian
is that?
podcast the other day. It came to me. It was a kind of a crude joke, but I felt like it was very defensible. I said, "Oh, we three straight white men can't have this discussion without an aborted fetus present," which is a vulgar joke in a way, but it's an anti-abortion joke that demonstrates that point exactly. So they were nervous, like, "Oh, you shouldn't have said that" or whatever. It didn't get a laugh, but I thought it
I
illustrates
appreciate
that point
it for what
that
it's
you
worth.
made
I'm super pro-life, and I think that's funny.
But that's true. I mean, anybody that has any opinion is somebody that didn't get murdered in the womb. At least, if you want to say that extreme.
Terminated, whatever. The vocabulary.
I don't know if I think murder. I really guess I don't think murder isn't exactly the way I feel about it.
Here's something that, and maybe you've heard this before. If a drunk driver, let's say a woman is pregnant and she's on her way to the abortion clinic. Have you heard this analogy before? Pregnant, on her way to the abortion clinic. She gets hit by a drunk driver, kills her and her fetus. Unwanted fetus.
Unwanted. She's already declared unwanted and is
she's
on her way.
She's
to terminate
got
the
that
pregnancy.
appointment made. That drunk driver, in theory, by law, would go to prison for 2 life sentences. Had he missed her by an inch, no problem. That baby is not alive. But it was alive. But it wasn't. That's
not his choice.
that's when it gets murky. Is like, why? How? Who's deciding whose life is worth living?
Yeah, that to me, the women's body is not the totality of their life and is therefore less valuable than an entire life. So it sucks if I didn't have, let's see, let's think of an area of my life. If I didn't get to have arms,
okay,
right? It's my arms, but I'm not allowed to use them.
Okay.
That wouldn't
see what
supersede an entire life of fetus. Like it'd be my right to use my arms.
Yeah.
But if I had to forfeit the use of them for make them go numb the rest of my life, for some other being to live, then I think that takes a back seat. So there's a portion of a woman's life and choice that they should have
100%
reproductive freedom and rights, but that's only a portion of her life. It's the entirety of that fetus's life. So the math to me,
to me that's why I love science and I love math and I love statistics. Like I honestly think it was a John Piper quote, so forgive me everybody, but I read something like abortion kills more black people in 4 days, I think, than the KKK has in 150 years. Is that wild? I mean, do Black Lives Matter? What are we talking about? There's just so many little kernels of sort of like, well, think about it this way. And that is what I want so desperately for my pro-choice friends to just like resonate with. But unfortunately, everybody's so focused on, well, you guys are coming at it from a religious perspective and you're judging me and you don't think I have rights and you're against my rights and all these things. And it's just like, how do we break this down so you guys know that I care about you?
Yeah.
But I also care about babies. That's where we have to get. Because demonizing people who believe that abortion is acceptable is not going to make any less
completely
abortions.
Not pragmatic, at least.
It doesn't work. I mean, not only is it just hurtful, it's not helpful.
It's not even going to help your cause. Like you basically at that point when you are holding a sign or doing something, there's even, I don't know, I even get lost on that. I can make an argument both ways, but in general, it seems that really obnoxious pro-life point is ineffective or counterproductive to the pragmatic goal of lessening the amount of abortions.
Well, it makes you realize that most people aren't for that goal. Most
right. They get something else out of
yeah.
that, like moral superiority or tribal
judgment
something.
Feels good.
Judgment feels good.
Anger feels good.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that the self-righteousness. Those things are attractive, and that seems to be what's driving a lot of it. It's not the actual pragmatic thing of lessening abortions, and it's a constant pain point of mine that I hate politics entirely because it's completely seems ineffective. And abortion's a good point of that. One time when we in Emory were playing in Washington, D.C., somebody asked us to come to the Capitol building and meet with a senator. I think it was Rick Santorum, actually, or something, some conservative guy, and his aides, and then he came in and met with us and gave us a bunch of literature about abortion. And what they told us was, and I don't even remember, I'm not going to say this exactly right, but I found it interesting. They were like, look, what we do here doesn't change anything. Like, we're going to do legislation, and they showed us the graph of Roe versus Wade and the amount of abortions that we're having, and then the year it became illegal, and they showed the graph of abortions, and it just didn't
legal?
even change. I think when they first, I don't even know the history of it, but when it was, at some point it was illegal, and some point it was legal, back and forth, or in some way, and the rate of abortions and how many were occurring was unaffected by legislation. So legislation has a point, and I'm not an anarchist or anything like that, but their point to us was, you guys are in culture. You got people listen to you. You have influence. The stuff you say and do matters. The stuff we say and do,
they're not in
the
relationship
way they put it, but that doesn't matter what the law is on many issues like this. And so when you're just playing the legislation game, it seems to
doesn't culture change laws?
Right,
laws
of course. That was their point. And I was like, whoa, here these politicians are telling us effectively the message I got from their horse's mouth is what we do isn't going to change anything. What you do does. And so therefore, for me to go and say I'm going to be political in my approach and seek legislation change seems stupid.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even interested. I don't even
So
participate
then what do we
with
do?
it.
So then what do we
I'm
have?
just going to do this. It's fine.
So we have just dialogue, right?
Right. That's better.
It's way better.
And if it I mean, the legislation will be an outflow of
people
that
have
because
to
these
be-
slimy politicians, I'm not naming them or whoever, they're just going to pass whatever we want strategically anyway in the end. So why don't we try to influence the culture itself? And then again, you're back to being judgmental. Seems counterproductive to that. So if you're not going to give your people that you disagree with credit and try to understand it and try to agree and be willing for them to change you too. You got to be willing.
And I have
for
changed
that.
so much by being in dialogue with my pro-choice friends, because it's not that I'm changing my view on the science portion of it, because science doesn't change, but I changed my view on the why people are having abortion and how hard it is. And it's not easy. I mean, there are some wacky ones that, honestly, I worked in women's healthcare for about 6 years at an OBGYN and midwifery clinic. And there were women who called to make appointments for abortion like they were calling to get their nails done. And it was just heartbreaking. And I think those women do a disservice to the women who really are devastated by the choice that they feel they have to make. Which brings me to, okay, if we all want to have less abortions and women feel, we talk about how they feel like they have to make this decision, right? How can we give them resources to give them a way out so they don't have to make this decision? There's this I think there's this notion that, if Obama actually once said, and I really like him as a guy, but this broke my heart. He said, and I'm not going to get this verbatim, but he said something like, abortion makes it possible for our daughters to be able to achieve their goals and dreams. And I think as a culture, that's how we live. Abortion, for a lot of women, makes it possible for them to achieve their academic goals, their career goals. And by perpetuating that, we are by default saying mothers are not capable of achieving academic and career goals.
True.
And aren't we supposed to
That's
be
at least
empowering
implicit
women?
message there. That's right.
Bullshit is what I think. And especially now as a mom, where it's like I need to figure out where my identity really is. As an entrepreneur especially, it's like, well, wait a second, I have a baby and I also care. I also want to do this and this and this. So aren't we supposed to be like celebrating women and giving them resources? It's crazy. So there's this...
I mean, how about just like, I mean, I understand there's a difference in women and men, but at least all we're talking, I sound like I'm diminishing it, but the birth and the delivery, that's one part of being a parent. Like, I'm a parent. It hurts.
Hey.
It hurts my entrepreneurial life, I can assure you.
No.
But on the other hand, it empowers me and gives me motivation and other things that I could assume or guess it could empower a mom. Like, I've been through that even for 9 months or for even a year and a half. I was out of the workforce, but I'm a different person as a result. I get baby up for adoption or I keep the kid anyway. Here's me now. I have a totally, it's not necessarily even a negative for your career, and maybe depending on your amount of privilege or that you could afford to do that. I don't know, but it's not as simple as less maternity leave, less pay, being held down.
The
That's
argument
too
is
simplistic.
like, well, it's not that simple. I just want to say to every person who is pro-choice, I get that it's not simple. You know what I mean? It's not like I think it's this. It's just like going through a drive-through. I'm not an idiot. You know what I mean? It's so devastating. But if we care about women's rights, we gotta care about women and their opportunities and giving them education. I mean, if we really want women to stop having unwanted pregnancies, we got to stop the pregnancies.
So would you go?
You know what I mean?
Would
Like,
you
let's
go
talk
there?
about that.
Let's talk about that. Do you support most birth control and even Planned Parenthood giving out condoms and doing preventative
I
stuff?
love condoms.
Yeah.
Huge fan of condoms.
And what about Planned Parenthood being given out and supporting birth control and not doing abortions, which seems reasonable to me. Good for them.
Yeah, and I don't want to talk about like politics really, but the only reason that I'm like super bummed on Planned Parenthood is it's just a private organization that is doing something that half the country is morally really upset about, and it just doesn't make sense for us to all be paying for it.
Right. But in general, you support
Yes.
sex education, birth control, condoms in high school.
My dream
obviously.
job is like junior high sex ed, middle school.
And give them condoms too, right?
Well, condoms, yeah, but I also want to show them all the pictures of all the things that you can contract. I mean, I'm serious. I just want people to. I've been using the fertility awareness method for the last like 6 years, so I haven't been on birth control. Is that TMI?
Nope.
And it was, as I'm 33 now, so in my late 20s and married, and for the first time in my life, I understood my reproductive system. And I'm not alone. Mm-hmm. I mean, I give this book out now for wedding gifts because women my age couldn't even draw a diagram.
They don't know nothing.
It's
a huge problem.
Completely absurd.
Yeah, it's very
Women
absurd.
think that they can just get pregnant any day of the week all the time.
Why don't women understand? I mean,
because we're
it
not
seems
taught.
that women don't even understand their anatomy that well.
They don't.
Which is
because all we're taught when we're younger is the sex part, the penis and the vagina, and then there's like a wiggly sperm cartoon, and then there is an egg somewhere, and then there's like the drilling of the sperm into the egg, and then all of a sudden the woman is 10 months pregnant. It's like, well, wait a second. Where's that egg coming from?
How did you grow up? Was it conservative? Like they didn't want you to know?
Kid,
okay.
Conservative.
Okay.
And homeschooled. Oh,
okay,
isn't that something?
So for instance, when you say you want to show middle schoolers what gonorrhea is and give them condoms at the same time,
I don't want to use fear as a tactic, but I just want them to know what can really happen.
Yeah, because but people like you may have, or I don't know about you, but obviously most parents go, I don't want them even exposed to this stuff because the base fear is if they know about sex, they'll have sex or something like that. That whole mentality, I think, is a bad problem. And I think it leads to this thing, which is just like one of the most devastating of all is we're against abortion until I need one. Yeah. That's the one that just, I can't get a grip on it. And it is so unbelievable common. How many conservative Christian moms will take their 16-year-old, 19-year-old to the clinic, and they'll be back on the picket line. That's just what they do.
The last chart that I saw, most abortions in America are by white evangelical.
Yeah, right. That makes sense because it's just repressed. They didn't know not to get pregnant. They could have never had a condom. They told themselves they wouldn't have sex. Of course, they do anyway. And then you've worked yourself into that hole. And of course, that's going to be the logical conclusion.
And then that's
when
also
50%
why
of people tell you it's what you should do anyway.
Yeah.
Crazy. I mean, it's just, but that's all about the repression and suppression of the information itself at an early age.
Well, and also like people use what about rape and incest? Which, okay, that's crazy. Let's talk about that. That's devastating and tragic. Okay, well, that's less than 1% of abortions in this country. As someone who likes math, that is not a good argument for the case if you're using like less. Sure. It's like Trump saying all Mexicans are rapists, so we got to get rid of all of them. It's like, well,
right.
No, that can't be your reason for getting rid of the Mexicans.
Well, first of all, the law is really clear.
That's also wrong for more reasons than just that.
But the law is very flexible and there's always going to be a difficulty assessing it. But there's plenty of things in the law where things don't have to be black and white. There's language for reasonable this and that. I mean, there's plenty of ways to do that. For instance, murder's illegal except for somebody breaks in your house and attacks you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can write that in. I mean,
laws change.
Whether or not, even if you wanted to concede, like I think rapes should still have to go to term. At least you would gladly concede. Okay, well, I'll give you that one, and we'll still be on the right track of reducing. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We could handle some nuance for
also,
sure.
Like resources for women are not available. Oh, you're a mess. Resources for women are not in those positions are just not available as available as abortion is. Abortion is just offered like it's, hey, you pregnant? Sure you don't want an abortion? And I can say this because I've been to Planned Parenthood for an appointment and I was offered abortion. And it was
really?
like, whoa, I didn't even, what? You know what I mean? There's this company working on an app right now. There's this gal, she's the head of New Wave Feminists. Have you heard of them?
No.
Remember the Women's March? There was that group that was asked to actually they got booted off the sponsorship list because the head of the march found out that they were pro-life.
Oh, yeah, I heard about
and then it
that.
became like,
That's,
I thought this
that
was about
sucks,
women.
yeah.
It just totally sucks. They went anyway, and it was great. But so Destiny is her name, and they're working on an app, and I don't remember what it's called now.
That's okay.
Anyway, but it's an app where young women can download the app and have local resources like, okay, are you pregnant? Here's where you can go get a pregnancy test. Here's free counseling, free prenatal care, and all these things. And it's brilliant because not the reason, but one of the main reasons that young women are getting abortions is because they're scared and they wouldn't know what to do with the baby. They don't know they don't have anybody guiding them. You know, they just show up at these clinics, often with nobody. A friend drops them off or whatever. And then they leave and that's it. And then what has happened? What just happened? There's no counseling. There's no...
That's obviously a real thing. I don't know if you know anything about it. I'm just saying it as it seems reasonable to me. I don't have any way to back it up, but it seems like the trauma of having an abortion is sometimes unexpected and totally uncared for in a way that you didn't anticipate. You thought, oh, the baby will ruin my life. But if you hastily or get talked into having an abortion and then, I mean, that's real.
That's
like,
so real,
know, as the miscarriage that we experience, like, big deal. And that was maybe
Huge
10 or 12
deal.
weeks, and a big deal.
When I miscarried,
And that wasn't even volitional. Like, so I mean,
there was no choice
right.
there.
So the fact that could happen to you, and it's physiologically what it is, and emotionally and hormonally, and then you're going to add guilt and stuff on top of that. Well,
why would
maybe carrying a baby is bad for your career, but maybe that is too. Even just on that level, especially if we talk people into, trust me, it's just regular old procedure. It's normal. I mean, that's dangerous.
What something that I think is really important is that just everybody needs to know what happens during an abortion. I think everybody needs to just understand the different procedures that happen based on how far along the pregnancy is. A friend of mine who's actually a worship pastor at one of the big churches here, him and I were talking, and this was back before the election, and we're just talking about like abortion being one of the hot topics, and should you vote for someone just because you're pro-life, and blah blah blah. And he said, well, I'm okay with abortion except for like the violent kind.
I'm okay with the pill kind, but not to chop up the baby's kind.
Because
fetus.
I was taken aback, and I thought, well, oh my gosh. Does he not really understand what... And I realized he just doesn't maybe understand. Like, what's less violent? Like, ejecting acid into their brain? Or, like, ripping off...
Limb from limb.
And crushing their... Like, pick your poison, I guess. But it's just... It blew my mind. And, if someone could... There's a lot of really good educational videos that show you, okay, this is actually what happens. And if you can watch that and say, like, okay, I'm okay with this or I'm not okay with this, great. At least you've made a decision.
Yeah, that's right.
We want to educate women, and we should be doing it with contraception, too. It's like working at the OBGYN clinic that I did for so long. It was crazy. People go in there to get birth control like it's getting a burrito. It's like we need to be really counseling people to know, like, are they making an educated decision? If they feel educated and they make a decision, I gotta respect them. You know what I'm saying?
Well, the people get mobilized the opposite way. So first of all, what you're saying there is not a very far cry from holding a sign with the graphic photos outside the clinic then, right?
Hey.
Do you find that reasonable behavior then?
I mean, I think it's a little tacky.
Well,
but
maybe it
I'll
saves
tell
one
you,
baby
yeah,
or something.
if
I
it
don't
saves
know.
one, if it makes one person think like, wait a second, my baby has eyeballs and a mouth and little fingernails.
Ugh.
It's nasty, isn't it?
Yeah.
But to not look at those things, to not, just like out of sight, out of mind. I'm not going to talk about abortion because I wouldn't have one. It's like in this.
I mean, I don't like when those people do that though.
I don't either. But as Louis C.K. said, those protesters are shrill. We hate those protesters, but they're doing it because they think you're murdering children.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just doing. I mean, who knows each individual's intentions, but that's why it's so awful. Is because that is how devastating that person holding the sign believes that it is.
Mm-hmm. Or at least could be that way. We don't know their total motives,
Yeah.
but that's true. And then on the other hand, you'd have to say what do you make of the one where people compare it to the Holocaust? Oh, it was this many of it, and we should treat it the same as combating Hitler or something. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't at all say that I feel that way about it, and that's what I'm saying. It's an inconsistency or distance for me. But
if we're aborting children because they have a defect, or they have Down syndrome, or fill in the blank, aren't we sort of picking and choosing the race that we want to have? Mm-hmm. Race is probably not the right word. Yeah. I homeschooled.
Well, it's that would be choosing.
But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're sort of like sort of trying to have this perfect society, which is
eugenic.
Yes.
In practice a little bit.
Right. Which also brings us to like if we're aborting children because they might, and by the way, those are not always diagnostic. It's just sort of like, well, there's a good chance they might have Down syndrome.
Right.
Which then if you abort and they don't, then it's like, what did you just do? But if they do, then why don't we just go euthanize everyone with Down syndrome? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. No, I mean it's just also heartbreaking because people that have Down syndrome, I've never experienced one that didn't have just joy. You know what I mean? Ugh. Wonderful. Yeah, I agree. I have a soft spot is one way to put it, but I'm just drawn to babies. So I'm trying to untangle if I just like babies or something. I can't even. You might just like babies. I just really like them. I mean, I always try to see. I didn't think about it until I had one, really. So I just I always kind of avoided them. I was like, I don't know, whatever. Well, they're gross. But once I had one, I was just like, oh my gosh, it's the most coolest thing in the world. And I like my kids way better when they were babies than I do now. And other people say the opposite, but that's true. Oh, that's normal. And if a friend has a baby, I gotta go see it in the first 10 days, and the closer to the birthday. Oh, you have like a specific type of baby that you like. I don't want to over explain it like it's a freaky thing or anything. But to me, this just the closer to birth, the more exciting it is, the more special the thing is, and so. I just get super lost on it, and I can't. And it's the same thing as that idea of you were saying before of 100% of people that are pro-abortion haven't been aborted or whatever. I think that just about existence. Like I go so far in my head that I can't even understand limiting the amount of children the family has. That's not a stance, by the way. Sure. But I can't really understand not having any children because to exist. I'm an existing person, and I'm glad I exist. Yes. So I say, who wouldn't want to exist? I'd go so far as to be like, I don't think you should have a vasectomy because, I mean, I can't even understand why you wouldn't want to have a fourth kid because what, are you going to have less pairs of clothes and shoes per kid? Like, that doesn't even compute to me. Like, because you love your kids so much. Yeah, I've never even met a sibling that was like, yeah, I wish we didn't have the littlest brother because then we could all had a little bit more lunch money and I could have a better car. We could have had better food. Well, because that doesn't even make sense. We're communal people. This is why I want more than one child, is because I feel like just by nature we go in packs. We're seems like you should have as many as possible. That's the logical thing. I'm not saying that I don't hold that view and hold people to that, but if you have 9 kids, I think you'll be glad. I don't know. My friend who has 7 kids, she's a Catholic. Which one do you wish didn't exist? Okay. Yeah. Tell me that. Okay. I mean, that just kind of seems. Womp womp. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, but she's exhausted and hilarious and but so happy. Now she's white. Mm-hmm. Sure. They've got money. Mm-hmm. in a really good relationship, it's different.
I know the last point of view I'm saying is obnoxious. I'm just saying it's my natural thought is along the lines of what.
Hey, I'm with you.
Like you're telling me you don't want to have more kids because the last one cried too much. I mean, so the next kid doesn't get to exist. I mean, not even. I'm talking about even before it's fertilized. That still strikes me as odd. So that colors my
which kind of goes to like
view,
if you are fertile, you have like this. You should keep the human race going.
Yeah,
I love it.
I mean, we're humans, right? Like you're humans. I mean, you can make them. I mean, oh my gosh.
But we can also adopt them.
Yes.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So that's the other issue is to be pro-life means a lot more things than
more. And you know this argument that is that I always hear, which is, okay, well, if you're going to be anti-abortion, then you need to be willing to adopt all the babies.
Is that true? Do you think that?
No,
okay.
That's absurd to me.
Okay.
Now, do I want to be more involved in getting people resources and supporting adoptive families and doing all this? Yes.
On a one-on-one though,
am I open to adoption? Yeah.
How would that play? See, I think we short circuit there because even what you just said there, if somebody came to me that I slightly knew, friend of a friend, and said, I'm thinking about going to the clinic, and I could talk them out of it. They said, but I'm going to give you the baby, or I'm going to the clinic. I'd have to say, I think I'd probably take the baby.
Well, you would take the baby because you love babies.
But then if another person came the next day, and then the next day, at some point I wouldn't, I guess.
But at some point you'd be like, okay, let me figure this out because I want these babies to find homes.
Yeah.
So
That's the way
I'm going to support this organization and try and figure out how I can, there are ways to fix the adoption mess that we have. But that argument, which is like, okay, then you have to take all the babies, is the same argument as like, well, people that are anti-immigration.
Therefore you have to put an immigrant in your basement.
You have to take 30 of them in your house. Well, that's not true at all. But
it's another thing to have empty words and say you're pro-immigration because it's cool, but you're not done. You could give some amount of dollars, right? $20 if you're giving $100.
It's cool to be pro-immigration, but it just is so uncool to be pro-life. It's just so uncool to feel how I feel.
Yeah.
Ugh.
It's a little bit of a trap.
I used to be so cool.
It's a trap, and it's tricky for those who I think are intellectually honest about it and less ideological and free thinking is hard. It's a harder place to be. That's why, right? I mean, that kind of sums it up, doesn't it? Like it ain't a great place to be. It's easier to go one way or the other.
Yeah, it would be so much easier to not feel this way. I don't love being pro-life. Actually, it makes me kind of nauseous, like just thinking about like all the things that are going on and how heavy it is on my heart. It would be so much easier to just be like, you know what? Not my problem. I wouldn't have an abortion. I mean, I don't think that you can be truly morally opposed to something, but okay with someone else doing it. Truly moral. I mean, we're talking about like in your heart of hearts, it should bother you if you're really against something. It's like you can't, and this is, I'm going to get toasted over this analogy, but you can't say, I am totally against slavery, but I'm okay with you owning a couple slaves. Yeah. Because then you're not morally opposed to that.
Well, it depends if it involves another person. So
if it involves
marriage,
like
instance,
hurting a person, ending a person's life, that's what I'm talking about. Sure, I think that you could be morally opposed to gay marriage, I guess, but be okay
with your neighbor or whatever.
Your neighbors getting married. Because it's not affecting the Yeah.
I mean,
the existence
that's different when it involves the other person. There's and their consent. That's where it doesn't.
Oh, consent, yeah.
That's where it falls apart, and you have to be consistent, or else you're being hypocritical somewhere.
Right. And the thing I don't understand is like most pro-choice people are very liberal. They're very much about human rights, equality, and they're always about like being the voice for the voiceless. And That's where it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, the reason why that is something in the neighborhood of these identities are put on first, and then we go out.
And
You know what I
then,
mean? You
yeah.
assume your cultural identity and platform, or left or right,
Because
or
you have
whatever.
to choose between the two.
Well, you can't have no opinion on every issue until you've done your research, nor could you come
Sure.
to it with a blank slate anyway.
Yeah.
So, thus, we must inherit from either those around us or
Right.
an ideology or our parents or a religion, our defaults, and then we can go challenge them.
Right.
Okay, so that's just where it is.
Yeah.
Not to mention there are rewards for going along with the flow in anything too. So
Yeah.
swimming against that is both difficult and not rewarded. And we enter society not obviously as a blank slate at all. So it's not that surprising that it is the way that it is.
Yeah. I just think people would be surprised to find out that we can talk about this with each other without it being like the picket lines and all the yelling and all the judgment.
Are you sure? I mean, I'm saying like me and you kind of agree, so we can talk about it. But have you
yes,
done conversations with people who've had
because-
abortions that have been civil? And
Yes. A friend of mine recently terminated her pregnancy because he had a sweet little babe, had like 4 different disorders going on. I mean, there was just so much going on, and the idea was, okay, even if it was a live birth, he's not going to live more than an hour, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And man, that's one of those decisions you just kind of have to decide where you're at, because I believe that, we should let life end when it is ready to end. Would that be easy? No.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I cannot imagine. Do I judge her for choosing to terminate? Not at all.
No, yeah, I don't at all.
Not at all. Does my heart break? Yeah. So how we have to separate it is, if we're really heartbroken about babies' lives being ended, we have to just solely be heartbroken about those babies' lives and love these women.
Your experiences you can have. I mean, that's still a little different than somebody that chose to have an abortion for their career's sake or because of their feminist belief.
Well,
or something.
sure, but my friend that I said that I've been talking to this last year, and who gave me this whole great list about like these assumptions that pro-choicers have about pro-lifers, she has given me a lot of insight into the mind of someone who has those sort of social, I call them social abortions. Is that terrible?
Probably. What does that mean?
Meaning having an abortion for social or economic reasons and not medical reasons. Social abortion sounds like a
that doesn't
weird
seem like the best term.
something that would
Convenience?
happen at a
Would you use the word
weird party,
convenience to
like
it?
free
Yeah.
tattoos.
Yeah. What about convenience? That'd be a little of
that's-
accusatory word
yeah,
there, but that's
because that makes
closer.
it sound like it's just this easy thing. And I get that it's not. But man, there's got to be more weight to it. Either you believe it is a life or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I respect people who say, yes, I believe it is it's a life, it's its own person. But I still believe that the woman has the right to choose.
Mm-hmm.
I actually respect that point of view because it makes sense.
It can be logically consistent.
There's no but if you really look at science, they agree with me with the science portion of it. They just disagree with me as far as like who we get to decide, or who's, do you know what I'm saying?
Well, there's
Who gets to
ethical stuff
decide-
you can't
yes.
solve, like the trolley thing. Like, would you actively kill somebody to save 2 passively?
Yeah.
Or if we decide not to do certain policies, we know that's going to result in a certain amount of deaths worldwide from hunger. Like, you know, like there's either passive, the activeness, like for sure, anybody with power at all is making decisions that result in deaths.
Well, yep.
We know that,
Yep.
right? But it's not active.
Yeah.
And so is it really all about the activity of the person or society as a whole?
Yeah.
They are reasonable points. You can make the
Yes.
argument as society as a whole is better to push one person off than harm 10 or
Yep.
kill 10 passively, but most people would choose the passive option. Like,
Yeah.
if those 10 people die, at least I didn't push the
Yep.
one.
Yep.
I mean, there's short-circuiting here that we have to acknowledge is not really
Yeah.
solvable.
Yeah, man, it's ugly. It's ugly. And it made me think, this last election really made me think. I was telling my friend about, like, okay, but as people who, as someone that is pro-life, like Hillary, for example, almost like borderline gets excited about abortion, which just like, man, I bet she's a cool lady, but that just bums me out. You know what I'm saying? So I was saying, like, well, I just ethically don't know if I can vote for her because, this moral dilemma I'm having. And he said, well, but she is so much better with our global policy. She might actually keep us
Save more
out
lives, maybe,
of war.
or,
So if you're pro-life,
some people think she started World War III. So now what are we talking
but
about?
But in theory, if she kept us from being in war,
Right.
we are saving lives. Because babies' lives aren't any more valid or worth more than an adult soldier's life. Equally value. And my pro-choice friend had mentioned that they make an assumption that as pro-lifers, we believe that babies' lives trump everything else, and that's not.
It shouldn't be true.
It's not true,
Yeah.
but that is it's really good for me to hear.
That's people being tossed around by politics and identities and stuff. That's the wrong thing, and it just makes me so mad to see people manipulated by the public or the press or the politicians.
Yeah, and that's why people need to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because there's so much to talk about.
You know, I heard, speaking of Hillary, I read an article about it, and the last person I talked to on the podcast mentioned it. There was a big case for why you should have voted for Hillary, even
if you were pro-life.
Even if you're pro-life overall. And it was a compelling case. And one of the points made somewhere is that during the last two Obama terms, abortions have been on the decrease. They've been going down effectively. Like the amount that has happened is actually less.
Yeah.
And you can attribute that to the way they deal with birth control, who knows?
Sure.
But,
and then what are we counting as abortions?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So there's cases to be made all the way around that you just can't. I mean, I think of everything this way. It's like I'm usually looking for a principle to act on, because otherwise you're just being like Trump or a politician or somebody else. You're just seeking some secondary thing or power or something. So of course you respect principled people, and principles, if you can boil it down and find a principle, that's your best conduct you can have. Because you can change your principle or be wrong about it, but you can try to be consistent. You can try to operate out of principle, whether it be for liberty or for life or for whatever it is. It's at least seems the best way. Otherwise you're simply opposing other people or seeking power or whatever.
And again, it's not help. It's doing nothing for your cause.
Yeah. So the hard work isn't to start with your position or cause, but it's to boil down and do some thinking and try to arrive at your principles and then find what the outcomes are.
Like I said, we all can agree that there should be less. Okay, well, let's talk about how we can have just a little bit less. Let's start there instead of like, let's eradicate it.
They do that with veganism, for instance. They say you're better off to eat less meat than you are to announce you're a vegan and then break or
just
be obnoxious. Just eat less meat and then eat less meat, and the more you can do, the better.
A little bit, just like
they say that's more effective, but people don't like it because they like the identity of putting on them a vegetarian.
So that's where I'm at. I mean, if people bring up but what about if the mom's life is in danger? Okay. What if we only had those abortions?
Great.
We'll
start there.
Let's start there.
I'll give you those.
I love it.
Yeah.
But that's not happening.
Right.
Because. Ugh.
Well, they do it in guns. Same thing. It's like, well, we can't give an inch because then they'll take a mile, and it's us versus them.
There will always be abortion.
Yeah.
I'm not an idiot.
Yeah.
I'm not an idiot, and I would like to say and forgive me if I said this already, but. There's this idea that if we eradicate abortion, if we make it illegal, then all pregnant women who don't want their babies are going to go home, and forgive me, I'm going to be a little bit gross, take a wire hanger, shove it up their vaginas, and give themselves a horrible at-home abortion, right? That is the one thing that people say that will happen if abortion becomes illegal. Can we give women a little more credit?
I mean, that will happen some, though.
Sure. But if that's the argument, instead of saying, okay, well, where can we meet halfway? It is like, okay, well, you can't do this because then everyone... If you meet halfway,
you're evil for conceding to the liberals or something like that.
If we're going to empower women, can we... If that's what they're doing, then... it's real clear women need to be more educated because most women are smart enough to know that sticking a wire hanger up your vagina is very dangerous for you. Forget the baby. Right? So if we're acknowledging, if the pro-choice movement is saying, well, this is going to happen, let's make sure women are more educated than that. Because that's nuts. It's true. And there's unfortunately 300 ways to give yourself an abortion. That's just like the one that people talk about the most because it's, I think, the most graphic. But it just bums me out that we're supposed to be so pro-women. But we need to give each other a little bit more credit.
Well, it's interesting just to know that there is a side of atheist, agnostic, and feminism and women-empowered people that have different viewpoints on this issue. That movement, that acknowledgement of that is nice.
It's exciting,
that's a movement. That's
Yeah.
That's something in my book. Like,
and as a Christian, I'm okay with taking Jesus out of the conversation.
I think I don't even.
He has
doesn't
to.
seem to color. I mean, You seem to think that that's where you get your values and stuff from. I think it's just even simpler than that. I don't think it has almost much. I mean,
Well, but
I can draw a lot of religious significance
Sure.
of why that is, but I think if you take all that out of it, I think everything. I think most of my view still holds up, just as in general logic and
which is why I'm a part of that group.
Yeah.
Is because telling people they're sinners for believing abortion's okay is not. You can't hold people who aren't Christians to Christian beliefs. It doesn't make any sense, and it's not fair.
True, of course, but I mean, I don't even think the Christian view would be the one that would almost lend itself to, well, it doesn't matter, they go to heaven or something anyway. I'm sure God takes care of it. That almost would let you off the hook more than
love
an
wins.
atheist views is all you fucking got. This is it, and you didn't even let it out. Oh my gosh, that sounds more criminal from an atheistic point of view, doesn't it?
Isn't it interesting though? That's why I'm so excited to find these people because I'm so refreshed. I always apologize to some of my atheist friends. It's like, dude, I'm so sorry I made this. we as Christians have sort of ruined this platform for you guys because good luck to you, but also thank you because some of the people that are doing the most work right now and having the most impact are not talking about their faith.
I think you can do a good job and leave the faith part.
I'm so happy. And a lot of Christians give me a hard time about that because they think I'm backsliding. But.
Well, I mean, that's just, I don't know. That's a question of pragmatism, if nothing else. It's like if you throw that, you get something out of throwing that badge up. Well, I know that's life because I know we're creating the image of God. Well, I mean, that's good for you to make yourself feel better, but I don't find it that pragmatic about convincing somebody else.
It doesn't work.
Except for the fundamental fact of, in fact, it'd probably work better in the opposite way. Even in an evangelical way, it would still make more sense to try to demonstrate that you and the atheist both believe that humans have value. Clearly we do.
Yes.
And then maybe once you get there, then maybe they'll oh, yeah, I guess so. In fact, I really think they have value, and then maybe the religious stuff starts to make sense to them secondarily.
Yeah.
Like that would be a good bridge, in my opinion, to go in the opposite direction.
Yeah. And most people get broken up about animal rights, but they don't even want to talk about.
Yeah, there's a lot of contradictions out
crazy.
there. Especially the women thing is a big one.
The women thing.
Well, I'm saying it causes the same thing when you talk about Islam or something. It's like, oh wait, we've got some real contradictions here, right? Like we think women are valuable, but now we're protecting Muslims, but they don't think they are. Or you think, what I mean? That's a whole nother thing. It's like, well, we protect life, we're anti-violence, we protect animals, but fetuses not as much as
I saw this
young cows.
Really
it gets crazy quick.
I saw this sign that was like, bacteria on Mars is considered the first sign of life, but a heartbeat in a person is not.
Right. Yeah, just a slight heartbeat before it can feel pain. Right.
Those are the kind of
as if
things that I hold true because I love that.
Well,
I feel like science is on my side, and it feels good.
Well, I even avoid that. Even hearing you say that makes me cringe a little bit. Cringe is a mean word to say to somebody, but I don't even like the notion of sides. I don't even really want to be right. It's not about even that. Sure. It's just
But it allows me to sleep at night knowing, okay, this makes the most sense to me because humans have to start somewhere, and you have to kind of pick a starting point. You know what I'm saying?
Yep, and I think that, beginning with criticism or analysis, you don't have to have silver bullet solutions for stuff, and you can just do a little bit. And this is a difficult podcast to end. It's heavy, I guess, in that regard, but
Yeah.
I don't know what else there is to say here. But maybe people can move a little bit and just do one step, and I think to criticize is valid if you can do it fairly.
Not starting with all that stuff.
You know.
I mean, we've all got to just start talking to each other about like where we're at in life, why we believe the things that we do, before we get to the I disagree because,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I mean, it's so stupid.
Like,
all I ever hear anybody saying is we need to have a conversation, but it just doesn't.
Nobody's having a conversation.
Well, it just doesn't seem, I don't know, like what's the deal
Start
with that?
with
Like every single issue people talk about it being a conversation, but yet most of the consumption is not conversational.
Yeah, I can't even have conversations with most of my Christian pro-life friends about this,
right?
Because they think that I'm crazy.
Yeah. So what? Yeah, I don't know. That's crazy.
I mean, I don't know how to end it either.
Well, it's all right. It's all right. But Ellen, thank you.
Cue baby crying.
Yeah. No, let's not do that. We won't soundtrack this episode or anything. Play sad music under it. But no, I appreciate being able to speak about it, clearly and relatively freely and with the nuance of it. So this is a good environment for that.
Yeah.
So podcasts aren't the silver bullet, but at least this works well to do a topic like this to me, except for the people screaming at their phones right now of the stuff you missed or forgot to take a hard line, or you're attacking women or whatever it is that you're doing. So
yeah.
I'm glad that we don't have
it.
to do it in front of an audience. You would feel them cringe multiple times during the thing.
Boo. Yeah.
But I don't think you said anything goofy, do you? Is it
No.
you feel like you said anything you need to apologize for or clear up?
No.
Is there anything you want me to take out of the feed before I publish it?
No.
No, of course not. It's totally fine. I think people will take you as you are and totally understand the person that you are. Some people will feel like, somebody that believes life at conception, what a quite reasonable person that was.
I think that's all I want.
Right, and I think that's what you'll get.
Yeah.
So I don't think you got anything to worry about. But thank you for thinking through it with me a little bit today.
Man, happy to be here.
All right.
Thanks.